involve our liberties. And we're going to go to the clock here because I need to have a time, how much time goes by in the program. We're going to start our time clock, 58:30. Okay, we got that going. And we got a little thing here called Make America Great. Got a little picture there. I don't know if you can see that or not. Make America Great. And the other one says, Make America Venezuela, Socialism. Socialism is good when it's the kind of socialism I like, when everybody owns everything. But when the people get to own stuff, you know, and not the government. When families own stuff, then that's good socialism. But when the government's controlling all that stuff and other people, it's not good for you. We have a birth certificate was made into a bond. It's worth billions, and proof all of your debt is prepaid. Birth bond slaves. Surprise, the Fed owns you. Surprise. President Trump is president of the corporation, but President James Buchanan Geiger is president of the republic, of which I'm a part. I signed the Declaration of the Constitution for the United States, so I'm a member of. So I don't think I can vote anymore as a U.S. citizen. No, I shouldn't do that because I'll be double-minded then. I'm a territorial Minnesota territory citizen of the land, a real true citizen of the Constitution for the United States. And my house belongs to that too, longitude and latitude. That was given to me through family, which is better than any Torrance title or patent title that you could ever get. This article is about the Federal Reserve's true history, ownership, and purpose, and you will be shaken by this if this is the first time you have seen this information. You know, I used to deliver banknotes from Aranet at St. Paul Airport, and I used to go to U.S. Bank, and I'd go to Northwest Bank, and I'd go to Wells Fargo, and I'd go to the Fed downtown. They had guards down there, and they had mirrors to go into your car to see if you had anything under the car. I don't know if they're looking for bombs or looking for whatever. And I would bring the bank notes in, and I'd take bank notes out, and they had a black pin board or something in there where the employees would put up jokes about the Federal Reserve being a non-legal government entity, and the bosses let them do that because they want us to know that they're in control, just like Hitler's henchmen. They don't want you thinking there's something else. They are the police, and they are wanting to control the people. And we are to rebuke the wicked off the land. We are to do that. We don't have any just against any human being because we want to know that God wants to save every soul. And we speak against the giants in the land, the giants of evil, the Rothschilds and the Federal Reserve. This article is about the Federal Reserve's true history, ownership, and purpose. And we got a little history of Hitler there too. Report claims that U.S. had secret government. Well, we find out now that there are many layers of government on top. Since the Civil War, they laid the U.S. government, different forms of the U.S. government, and bankrupted some of them and put the money into special funds and things like that, so that they can start a new fund in Congress and say they're in debt some more and take some more money from the people. They've got money everywhere. That's our money. Miami, Florida. Some of President Reagan's top advisors operated a parallel government that, among other things, has been linked to the theft of briefing materials from Jimmy Carter's 1980 presidential campaign. Reported today. The group operated outside the traditional cabinet departments and agencies almost from the day Reagan took office, with the National Security Council coordinating its activities. Congressional investigators and administration officials told the Miami Herald, which reported its findings in today's editions. A White House official denied that any of Reagan's aides had operated secretly. The newspaper quoted one unidentified source as saying that the influence of the fired National Security Council aide Oliver North was so great that he was able to have the orbits of the surveillance satellites altered to follow Soviet ships around the world, and called for the launching of high-flying spy aircraft on secret missions over Cuba and Nicaragua. North also was said to have drafted a secret contingency plan that called for suppression of the Constitution, turning control of the United States over to the Federal Emergency Management Agency, appointment of military commanders to run state and local governments, a declaration of martial law during a national crisis, and the Herald said, but we already were under a fictitious military martial law already since the Civil War, when they turned the Constitution forward to the Constitution of the United States. Officials say the genesis for the phenomenon government may be traced to an October 1980 decision by the late CIA Director William Casey, then Reagan's campaign manager, to create an October surprise group to monitor President Carter's negotiations with Iran for the release of the 52 American hostages. Congressional aides now link another campaign incident, the theft of Carter's briefing materials before October 28, 1980 debate, to the same group of advisors that included campaign foreign policy advisor Richard Allen, the newspaper reported. There appears to have been no formal directive for the advisors' activities, and the arrangement allowed Reagan administration officials to claim no involvement in controversial or illegal activities, the sources said. Former National Security Advisor William Clark, Attorney General Edwin Meese, and Casey were included in the group's structure. The report said the president knew of or approved at least some of the group's activities, but the extent of his involvement and that of his aides is unclear, the newspaper reported. Congressional investigators and current and former administration officials do not have a full picture of the operation, but the group did initiate the sale of arms to Iran in exchange for U.S. hostages, the newspaper said. In a secret memorandum to leaders of the Iran-Contra Congressional Investigation Panel, Senators Daniel Inouye from Hawaii and Warren Rudman, RNH, New Hampshire, Republican New Hampshire, the chief counsel for the Senate, Arthur Lemon, wrote that investigators planned to reveal how it was decided to transfer responsibility for the Contra support to the National Security Council. This is the part of the story that reveals the whole secret government within a government, operated from the Executive Office building by a lieutenant colonel with its own Army, Air Force, diplomatic agents, intelligence operatives, and appropriations capacity, Lemon wrote. FEMA ordered Automax prison cars from Gunderson Steel, modified from original FEMA design to carry automobiles. They apparently wanted people to become accustomed to seeing these rail cars, so they would just think they were hauling autos. They were prison cars, is what they were. CFR will use guillotines in America. Retired FBI agent told Patriot Groups that Obama's feds have set up 30,000 guillotines. If you don't take the RFID chip, off goes your head. But of course, Wisconsin, I think it's South Dakota or North Dakota, have had laws for a long time that if you put a chip in somebody, it's a $10,000 fine per day. If a doctor does it without the person knowing it, it's a $10,000 fine per day. And Minnesota is trying to pass that same law. I think Gruenhagen is helping to work on that. I hope he is. Welcome to Operation Paperclip. Operation Paperclip was the code name under which the U.S. intelligence and military service extracted scientists from Germany during and after the final stages of World War II. The project was originally called Operation Overcast and is sometimes also known as Project Paperclip. Of particular interest were scientists specializing in aerodynamics and rocketry, such as those involved in the V-1 and the V-2 rockets, chemical weapons, chemical reaction technology, and medicine. These scientists and their families were secretly brought to the United States without State Department review and approval. Their service for Hitler's Third Reich, NSDAP, and SS memberships, as well as the classification of many as war criminals or security threats, also disqualified them from officially obtaining visas. An aim of the operation was capturing equipment before the Soviets came in. The U.S. Army destroyed some of the German equipment to prevent it from being captured by the advancing Soviet Army. The majority of the scientists, numbering about 500, were deployed at White Sands Proving Grounds, New Mexico, Fort Bliss, Texas, and Huntsville, Alabama, to work on guided missiles and ballistic missile technology. This in turn led to the foundation of NASA and the U.S. IACBM program. Much of the information surrounding Operation Paperclip is still classified. Separate from Paperclip was an even more secret effort to capture German nuclear secrets. Equipment and personnel, Operation Alsos, another American project, TICOM, gathered German experts in cryptography. The United States Bureau of Mines employed 7 German synthetic fuel scientists in a Fischer-Tropsch chemical plant in Louisiana, Missouri in 1946. That's a little information. HAARP. This is 2018, I think. The 180-foot antenna HAARP array is spread across the 40-acre site in Gacona, Alaska. Michael Kleeman, U.S. Air Force. Get breaking news alerts and special reports. The news and stories that matter delivered weekday mornings. Subscribe. The U.S. Air Force has notified Congress that it intends to shut down HAARP, a controversial Alaska-based research facility that studies an energetic and active region of the upper atmosphere. Conspiracy theorists are abuzz about the news given that HAARP, short of high-frequency active auroral research program, has long been the center for wild speculation that the program is designed to control the weather. Or worse, in 2012, Venezuela leader Hugo Chavez claimed that HAARP, or a program like it, triggered the Haiti earthquake. What comes out of Venezuela, we don't know. So the earth and the Haitian quake of 2010 was caused by the slippage of a previously unmapped fault along the border of the Caribbean and North American tectonic plates. HAARP is a research program designed to analyze the ionosphere, a portion of the upper atmosphere that stretches from about 53 miles, 85 kilometers above the surface of the Earth to 370 miles, or 600 kilometers up. The program has been funded by the Air Force, the Navy, and the University of Alaska, and the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, DARPA. You imagine how many funds they got out there, the government? The Air Force notified Congress they're going to shut down HAARP. The U.S. military is interested in the ionosphere because this portion of the atmosphere plays a role in transmitting radio signals. HAARP sends radio beams into the ionosphere to study the responses from it. One of the few ways to accurately measure this inaccessible part of the atmosphere. HAARP operates out of the HAARP Research Station in Gacona, Alaska, where it has been a high-power radio frequency transmitter that can perturb a small portion of the ionosphere. Other instruments are then used to measure the perturbations. That's a little bit about HAARP. I think that's old news, folks. But at any rate, what they don't want you to know. Icelanders overthrew the government and rewrite Constitution after banking fraud. No word from the U.S. media. This is in 2013. This is a while ago, folks. Iceland reveals $1.25 billion in mortgage reductions. They created their own money backed by gold and silver, and they jailed a bunch of Rothschild bankers. Rand Paul endorses Convention of States to rein in feds and strengthen Constitution. We find that we believe that Rand Paul is more close to God and more truthful about things than his dad. His dad is trying to stop the Federal Reserve over there, which is good, yeah. Have you been hornswoggled? Which flag is which? By Richard McDonald. You get different flags here. The people of the United States actually have 2 national flags, one for our military government and another for the civil. Each one has 50 stars in its canton and 13 red and white stripes. But there are several important differences. Although most Americans think of the stars and stripes above left as their only flag, it is actually for military affairs only. See the two flags, folks? We get a little closer to the one there. Why am I missing it? Oh. Here you can see it a little better. Those are the two flags. Oh. Although almost most Americans think the Stars and Stripes above as their only flag, it is actually for military affairs only. The other one, meant by its maker for wider use peacetime, has vertical stripes with blue stars on a white field above right. You can see this design, which bears civil jurisdiction. Civil jurisdiction, not military. See, we've been living under a military war and emergency powers martial law that they don't tell you about since the Civil War. In the U.S. Coast Guard, you can see this design, which bears civil jurisdiction in the U.S. Coast Guard and Customs flags, but their service insignias replace the 50 stars. So in other words, the Coast Guard uses that peacetime flag, but they put their service insignia in where the stars are. I first learned of the separate civil flag when I was reading Nathaniel Hawthorne's The Scarlet Letter, published in 1850. The introduction, titled The Custom House, includes this description. From the loftiest point of its roof, during precisely 3.5 hours of each forenoon, floats or drops in breeze or calm the banner of the Republic, but with 13 stripes turned vertically instead of horizontally, and thus indicating that a civil and not a military post of Uncle Sam's government is here established. So when we want this in all the states, in the 50 states, we don't want the military in here. We want this in our cities. We don't want the military flag, this one, in our cities, you see. And in our football games or whatever, should be in the colleges. History book publishers just contribute to the public's miseducation by always picturing the flag in military settings, creating the impression that the one with the horizontal stripes is the only one that there is. They don't actually lie. They just tell half the truth. For example, the first American flag they show Betsy Ross sewing at George Washington's request was for the Revolution. Of course, it was a military flag. The U.S. government hasn't flown the civil flag since the Civil War. There you go. I told you, we're under military rule. That's why houses are called residential houses. They tax you because your house is a military barracks for the war. And that this war is still going on. The god of Mars is still going on. The Roman mercantile war. Peace and war has no conscience. It does what it needs to do. Peace has never been declared, nor have hostilities against the people ended. The government's hostility against us, the people. The government is still in operation under quasi-military rule. You hear that? Quasi-military rule. It's like a secret martial law. You movie buffs may recall this in the old westerns. The Old Glory has their stripes running sideways and a military yellow fringe. Most of these films are historically accurate about that. Their stories usually took place in the territory still under military law and not yet states. Before World War II, no U.S. flag, civil or military, flew within the 48 states except in federal settings. Only state flags did. Since then, the United States government seems to have decided the supposedly sovereign states are its territories too. So I'm a member of the sovereign state of Minnesota, not the state corporate Minnesota. Corporate state of Minnesota is the government we have today, a fake government on top of the real government. And everybody must give an account to God of all the senators and legislators, even Gruen Howland and the Christian man out west. There's other people. The chiropractor in Anoka, what's his name? All these people are in a fake government, and they don't realize they're swearing Constitution of instead of Constitution for, which is not our real government. So the U.S. government seems to have decided supposedly the sovereign states are its territories too, so it asserts its military power over them under the law of the flag. Today, the U.S. military flag appears alongside or in place of the state flags at nearly all locations within the states. Now, I'm a Marine, and Marines are sworn to uphold the Constitution of when they go into the military service today. But we should be swearing, Marines, you and I simplify, that we are swearing to uphold the Constitution for the United States. That's the true Constitution. If we were deceived, we need to repent of that, all of us, of the lie that we believed, and start to believe the truth. All of the state courts and even the municipal ones now openly display it. So they're actually provost courts. They're not really what they say district court. No, it's a provost military court. This should have raised serious questions for many citizens long ago, but we've been educated to listen and believe what we are told, not to ask questions or think or search for the truth. We're taught to follow like a little lamb to the slaughter. In Hornswoggle deceived, the term comes from the traditional image of cuckold husbands wearing horns. Canton, the rectangular section in the upper corner of the flag next to the staff. The Scarlet Letter, an authoritative text edited by Scully Bradley, W.W. Norton, New York, 1978, pages 7 through 8. There is also a picture of the Coast Guard flag in Webster's Third New International Dictionary of the English Language. Unabridged, G&C Merriam Company, Springfield, Massachusetts, 1966. For more about the law of the flag, see A Fiction at Law in the printed version of the Perceptions magazine, May, June 1995, issue 9, page 11. About the author, Richard McDonald is a California citizen domiciled in the California State Republic, not California Corporation. California State Republic. He does legal research and has his own site on the web, State Citizen Service Center. You can look up State Citizens Service Center. This article was transcribed without permission from May, June 95 issue of Perceptions Magazine, CO 10734, Jefferson Boulevard, 502 RW, Culver City, California, postal zone 90230, telephone 310-313-5185. Isaiah 33:22, for the Lord is our judge, the Lord is our lawgiver, the Lord is our king, he will save us. The Lord is our judge, that would be the judicial. The Lord is our lawgiver, that would be the legislature and the Senate. And they should be under the Constitution for, all of these people, instead of Constitution of. And the Lord is our king, the president. He should be under the Constitution for, which James Buchanan Geiger is, and the Re-Inhabited Republic is. So if you go up to republicfortheunitedstates.org, you can listen to the phone conversations Monday through Thursday. Monday night is prayer night. And discover what's going on with the Republic. Massive online pedophile ring busted by the cops. Okay. Uh-oh. I guess I'll leave that to the news department, some other news department. We don't want to offend too many people out there. We want to fight against the giants in the land, the evil spirits that are fighting against people that are, and we pray for those of you that are in the state government, that God will forgive you, that you can start to swear under the Constitution for and start to be honest with the Republic being restored. And so the turning of the U.S. corporation government, military government back over to the Republic for which it stands, which we all used to say in school, and to the Republic for which it stands. That's our true allegiance is supposed to be. And so are you people that are in the legislature and in the Congress of Minnesota, of Wisconsin, of the government. You're in a fake government, and you need to get the government straightened out. Because you have the power to change the oath back to the Constitution for when you come to find out this truth. You'll be able to work together with the rest of us to make America God's country again. And that would be more than great if we could make it under God again, or called by His name, the city called by His name. The Act of 1871, the United States is a corporation. There are two constitutions. You see that? That came out of federaljack.com, slavery. We are the 63 drone sites approved by the FAA in the U.S. Where are the 63 drone sites? TSA treats 95-year-old wheelchair-bound veteran like a terrorist. $300 stolen. The Act of 1871, the United States is a corporation. There are two constitutions. We pray for our soldiers right now that have been part of this deception. No wonder they have problems, adjusting to a society. They've been deceived like the rest of us, and we pray for those, and that God forgive us of our being deceived, and we won't be deceived anymore. We want to stand up for the rest of our society and the families. Since the Act of 1871, which established the District of Columbia, we have been living under the United States Corporation, which is owned by certain international bankers and the aristocracy of Europe and Britain. In 1871, the Congress changed the name of the original Constitution by changing one word, and that was very significant, as you will read. Some people do not understand that one word or two words difference in any legal document do make the critical difference. And God said, "You shall give an account for every idle word you say." But Congress has known and does know this. 1871, February 21, Congress passes an act to provide a government for the District of Columbia, also known as the Act of 1871. With no constitutional authority to do so, Congress creates a separate form of government for the District of Columbia, a 10-mile square parcel of land. See Acts of the 41st Congress, Section 34, Section 30, Section 3, Chapter 61 and 62. The act passed when the country was weakened and financially depleted in the aftermath of the Civil War. Was a strategic move by foreign interests and national bankers who were intent upon gaining a stronghold on the coffers and neck of America. Congress cut a deal with the international bankers, specifically Rothschilds of London, to incur the debt to said bankers. Because the bankers were not about to lend money to a floundering nation with serious stipulations, they devised a way to get their foot in the door of the United States. The Act of 1871 formed a corporation called the United States. The corporation, owned by foreign interests, moved in and shoved the original Constitution into a dustbin. A dustbin where they put the dust when they... With the Act of 1871, the organic Constitution was defaced, in effect vandalized and sabotaged. Now, I know that every person is supposed to be uphold the Constitution for the United States. We need to turn this around. When the title was capitalized and the word for was changed to of in the title. You see that? They changed the word of to the word for to the word of in the title. Constitution of the United States of America. No, for America is what it's supposed to be. The Constitution of the United States of America is the Constitution of the Incorporated United States of America. It operates in an economic capacity and has been used to fool the people into thinking it governs the Republic. It does not. The Republic was re-inhabited in the year 2012 and is weaker than this government right now, but it's growing. Capitalization is not insignificant when one is referring to a legal document. This seemingly minor alteration has had a major impact on every subsequent generation of Americans. What Congress did by passing the Act of 1871 was create an entirely new document, a constitution for the government of the District of Columbia, an incorporated government. This newly altered constitution was not intended to benefit the Republic. It benefits only the corporation of the United States. It's a constitution of the government towards us. It's really, really bad, folks. Oh yeah, I got some stuff here that's not worthy. Two constitutions in the United States. It was illegal, suspended in favor of Vatican Crown Corporation. Yeah, the government became a Vatican crown, which is the British Crown Corporation. So we have the three cities of the nation the Bible talks about: Washington, D.C., inner city London, and the Vatican. Let me see if I have the red paper here. Okay, yeah, we do. We're going to start reading about that now, about this government, this fake government. You got your ears on? It's getting kind of cold in here. Well, better warm up. This is Minnesota Republic at gmail.com, Wednesday, April 18th, 2018, 6:54 a.m. This is from the Minnesota Republic, of whom I'm a member of, the Minnesota Republic, the real government. Expose all the Queen's agents and corporations that control the world. New post on American intelligence media. Expose all the Queen's agents and corporations that control the world. We may not realize it, but we are still subjects of the British monarchy. American history books and classes indoctrinated propaganda us into believing we had won the American Revolution. But we didn't. We are still subjects of Queen Elizabeth. The history books were written by the victors in their big publishing houses, and it was much easier to control the new colonies by letting them think they had won their independence, while the British Crown carefully laid their tentacles throughout America, tentacles that grew longer and stronger with every passing year. We notice the government keeps getting stronger and stronger, and the people keep getting weaker and weaker. We aren't the American, well, we are strong in the trials too, we have some strength. We aren't the American we think we are. That's the big red pill. Most of us on planet Earth are still under the Queen's rule. To get started with the real history of who runs the planet Earth, we suggest that you listen to this conversation between Douglas Gabriel and Michael McKeeban. They will explain the big picture, then you will be ready to read the report that follows. The Queen's prerogative. English law prohibits questioning the monarchy about their personal holdings and business. This is true of most of Europe's royalty, whether enthroned or not. The wealth of the monarchies is held outside of the countries that made the wealth. The British Crown's offshore banks hold the greatest personal wealth in the world, estimated at 35 trillion. Perhaps the British Crown still owns and controls its Commonwealth nations, including the American colonies. Monarchies are not supposed to be warlord bankers who create conflict and chaos to turn a profit or destabilize an economy for personal gain. But they have been for some time now, and history is a string of immoral wars caused by monarchies, the Vatican, and other religions. Untold millions have died while kings and popes lived on to grab the wealth through the well-established institutions that were created to control the commoner. The Commonwealth of Nations, headed by Queen Elizabeth II, is made up of 53 nations spanning the globe, accounting for 1/5 of the landmass of the earth and a very high percentage of its strategic resources and population. The Queen is a Knight of Malta and has vowed allegiance to the Pope through the largest insider trading club on the planet. The British Crown agents are, in fact, also agents of the Vatican Knights of Malta. The Knights of Malta have an oath that they swear that they will kill, weaken, poison. I'm not going to go into all the words, anything that ain't Catholic, so that the world ends up all Catholic. So they were willing to kill, poison, weaken, dismantle anything that's not Catholic. Put it under persecution, put it under sickness, whatever. The oath is really deep in how to kill off the rest of the world. It's almost like its own jihad, the oath of the Knights of Malta. The Roman Catholic priestly order of the Jesuit Society of Jesus subordinated the SNOM, the Southern Military Order of the Malta, in 1798, aided by Napoleon Bonaparte. This would eventually lead to the Jesuits installing British control over the island Malta and the founding of a Jesuit college named by British Jesuits. The Jesuits became somewhat crippled by this suppression in Catholic-controlled Europe. So in order for the Jesuits to secure the South American wealth, they used Protestant banking houses and formed an alliance with the Venetian influences over Britain, like the Pallavicini family who controlled the monarchy and the Rothschilds. Pallavicini. The Jesuits in 1840 put the Hohenschenzen, Coburg, and Gotha bloodline into the position of monarchy of Great Britain. This house is known today as the Windsor House, which still rules the UK and the Commonwealth nations. The same fate would eventually happen to the Vatican itself after suppressing the Jesuits in 1773. The Jesuit order took control of the papacy by 1814 and had enacted revenge once again for their persecution. The Order of Malta and the recognized Protestant divisions all play a role commanded by the Jesuit order. This includes the most venerable order of the Hospital of St. John of Jerusalem, controlled by Queen Elizabeth II. If you look at the last Grand Masters of the Order of Malta, you will notice they came from Britain. Former Grand Master Andrew Willoughby, Ninian Bertie, was a cousin to Queen Elizabeth II. Originated with the Grand Priory of England, the British arm of the Order of Malta, controlling St. John's Wood, is known as the Grand Priory of England. This location was once also a Knights Templar headquarters in Britain. The Order of Malta even owned Londinium, the City of London. The City of London was eventually rented out by the Order of Malta as their headquarters. The Jesuits took over Londinium in 1825, aided by the Rothschild family, who had become the most powerful economic force in England. When you take a look at many of the influential positions of power today, whether it is in banking, military, pharmaceutical, or intelligence, you'll always find Knights of Malta. The Knights of Malta are mainly involved in working for and with the black nobility, royalty without an active throne, the Vatican, and the various papal and royal orders, especially the Jesuits, who are ultimately in control of the Vatican and the military order of Malta. The SNOM, the Order of Malta, most powerful controlling inner cores are the Order of the Garter and the Pilgrim Society, which are controlled by the Queen. When you look at who controls the financial world, you will find it is the Equestrian Order of the Holy Sepulchre of Jerusalem, Order of Malta, and Opus Dei through the City of London Corporation, and the Worshipful Company of Mercers, and the more recent, the Worshipful Company of International Bankers. The Queen's Offshore Kingdom. 1/3 of all world wealth is held offshore, and about half of the world trade flows through those tax havens, the Tax Justice Network. James S. Henry, former chief economics at McKinsey and Company, estimates that wealthy individuals have approximately $35 trillion in private financial wealth tucked away in offshore havens, with $6.1 trillion in UK dependent states. As a result of this offshore accounting, it is estimated that 60% of the global trade now consists of internal transactions within multinational companies. In total, it is estimated that this complex corporate offshore accounting, multinational corporations avoid paying about $240 billion per year in taxes. The City of London, UK, is now the money laundering capital of the world. The UK firms aiding corrupt officials and criminals from across the globe to hide trillions of US dollars of ill-gotten gains. British-based banks have helped hide more than $6 trillion in nefarious payments and criminal proceeds since the year 2000. Cayman Islands benefit from the added support of being territory of the United Kingdom. The Caymans offer a number of tax-free incentives and little financial regulation and oversight. Today, the country is the world's 5th largest financial services center. It plays host to over 10,000 mutual funds and over 200 banks, over 90,000 companies, and 140 trust companies. It's the world's top home for hedge funds and captive health insurance companies. Bermuda is another piece of UK territory that has long been known as tax haven. Bermuda's tax system puts taxes on staff payrolls, but not on corporate earnings or investment income. Its largest customer for offshore transactions is the United States. Guernsey belongs to the British Crown, but makes its own laws on matters such as taxation. The island of 65,000 people has made a big push towards being an offshore finance destination, and its main street is lined with private banks, law firms, and accounting firms. Jersey is another small British Crown dependency in the English Channel. Jersey prints its own banknotes and makes its own tax laws. A culture of secrecy and non-disclosure in the island has resulted in Jersey housing an estimated $5 billion of wealth per square mile. Half of Jersey's tax avoidance trade comes from the UK. The British U.S. Federal Reserve. Using the first major corporation in England as their model, the British East India Company warlord bankers starts wars for profit, slavery and looting of mines, gold, diamonds, minerals, and land. Is all in a day's work for an imperialist. England's imperialism has worked into economic and banking practices worldwide, and the Queen's Crown agents and agencies have controlled global resources for centuries. There is a linear connection between the Rothschilds, the Bank of England, and the London banking houses, which ultimately links the stockholders of the Federal Reserve banks to their subsidiary firms in New York, the City of London, UK, the two principal Rothschild representatives in New York, J.P. Morgan Company and Kuhn and Loeb and Company, were the firms which set up the Jekyll Island Conference, at which the Federal Reserve Act was created and directed the subsequent successful campaign to have their plan enacted into law by Congress, and who purchased the controlling amounts of stock in the Federal Reserve Bank of New York in 1914. These firms had their principal officers appointed to the Federal Reserve Board of Governors and the Federal Advisory Council in 1914. In 1914, a few families, blood of business related, owning controlling stock in existing banks, caused those banks to purchase controlling shares in the Federal Reserve regional banks. Estimation of the charts and text in the House Banking Committee Staff Report of August 1976 and the current stockholders list of 12 regional Federal Reserve banks show this same family control. The Queen loves war's spoils. Now let's look at the top shareholders of the top military contractors for America, who we will call the corporate or bankster warlords, to see what connections they might have to the British Crown's investments. Vanguard Group, State Steel Corporation, Capital Research Global Investors, Templeton Investment Council, LLC Barclays Bank, PIC, BlackRock Investment Management, UK, Ltd, Schroeder Investment Management, Capital World Investors, Bank of America Corporation, J.P. Morgan Chase & Company, Bank of New York Mellon Corporation, BlackRock Advisors, BlackRock Fund Advisors, Old Republic International, Wellington Management Company, BlackRock International Trust Company, N.A. Evercore Trust Company, N.A. MR LLC, Investment LC Ltd, Franklin Resources, Goldman Sachs Group Incorporated, T. Rowe Price Group Incorporated. What is worth noting about this list is that you can find some of the unusual suspects: Rothschilds, Rockefellers, Morgans, Warburgs, and the rest of the banksters warlords behind some of these names. To make things even more complex so that we can never figure out who is in charge, every one of these corporations owns major shares in every other corporation. They are intertwined like a grapevine. If we look closer, we find that every one of these corporations conducts international business and is invested in international military ventures. This type of corporate welfare is transnational. It is beyond being international or global. These companies work outside of the control of America as a nation and have stronger ties to Britain than to America. They work against Americans with their transnational economic warfare and make money from both sides of any conflict. Essentially, these British and international corporations are war criminals, just like Henry Schroeder, the Brit who funded both Hitler and England. This type of banking warfare is common throughout British history, the Crown's money-making war machine. Essentially, all the conspiracies about the Queen of England have come some merit after following the money back to the warlord bankers who set up the U.S. Federal Reserve. But unlike most conspiracy theories suggest, the Federal Reserve regional banks are not the true culprits. The true culprits are the original investors in the corporations. listed above, who served the military through all types of wars, physical conflict, cyber warfare, and economic terrorism. It is the interwoven fabric of the investments of the war-supporting corporations that have created a system that is inbred and tied to Britain, then to Rome, simply through the association of the royal families of the world who are members of the Knights of Malta. You have an economic intelligence community that is comprehensive insider trading at a transnational level. The monarchies must protect their financial interests and pass wealth into their family members. That is why so many of the richest families intermarry to keep it all in the family. The richest and most powerful people in the world belong to the Knights of Malta, the Equestrian Order of the Holy Sepulchre of Jerusalem, the Order of the Garter, the Teutonic Knights, and the Orders of the Vow of Allegiance to the British Crown, and subsequently to the Vatican. If we wish to broaden the perspective, one can add that the Society of Jesus, the Jesuits, are involved at all levels and have worked tirelessly as the soldiers of the Pope to create the ultimate insider spy network for the Vatican Bank. Now, we've got to look behind all of this and see Satan is behind much of this. And we're not battling against flesh and blood, so we're praying for the people to come out of this beast, this monster. British private intelligence agencies. The UK has many private intelligence agencies who are devoted to the collection, analysis, and exploitation of information for a profit. Christopher Steele, the author of Carter Page Dozier, was a former British spy, which shows you the unethical nature of British spying. 63, Orbis, Business International, Cambridge Analytica, and many other British private intelligence agencies sell propaganda as intelligence. Often these corporations have private contracts with the U.S. military and government and maintain top secret security clearances with the United States. Britain has not shown itself to be honest spies, as is evidenced by the Iraq weapons of mass destruction, lies, the current British disinformation coming out of Syria. Some U.S. 56 billion or 70% of the U.S. 80 billion national intelligence budget of the United States was in 2016 earmarked for the private sector. Functions previously performed by the Central Intelligence Agency, National Security Agency, and other intelligence agencies are now outsourced to British private intelligence corporations. Some of prominent British intelligence agencies who maintain military and government contracts with America are Aegis, UK-based, Black Cube, Israel and UK-based, Control Risk Group, UK-based, Hackloot and Company, UK-based, Oxford Analytica, UK-based, Circle Group PLC, UK-based. Can we really trust intelligence from a country that has provided false intelligence many times? It was British intelligence itself that spied on Trump from NASA's NSA's headquarters in Fort Meade. Lied to me once, shame me, you lie. Shame on me, shame on you. Lied to me twice, shame on me. Who really owns and runs the Bank of England? When the Jesuits were suppressed by the Pope in 1773, they used their convert power over England to have the Rothschild family become guardians over the Jesuit South American stolen wealth instead of deposing it in the Vatican Bank. This action started a banking war between the Vatican and the Jesuits, who used the Rothschild family as the anti-Vatican bank. The Rothschilds eventually became the guardians of the Jesuit treasury in the City of London. The Rothschilds used the worshipful company of mercers to create the Bank of England, which now held the Jesuit wealth stolen from South America. The Bank of England's efforts were focused on taking over the City of London, UK, from Vatican control. The Knights of Malta have never been favorites of the Jesuit order. This hatred of the Knights of Malta increased even further in 1768 when the Knights removed the Jesuits from the island of Malta. The Jesuits sought their revenge 1 year later in 1798 using Napoleon. The Jesuits subordinated the Knights of Malta in the same year that was the true start of the takeover of the City of London, which was still ruled covertly by the Knights of Malta. If you look at the St. John's Wood where the Order of Malta based, you will see it as the old haunt of the Knights Templar in England. Since the time that the City of London became a sovereign nation, If you look at one of the four of the most powerful order of Malta headquarters in Rome, you will see that the Aventine Hill is another old Templar haunt, which was their original world headquarters. The control of the Bank of England through the worshipful company of mercers is what controls the global economy. The U.S. economy is fully controlled by the mercers of the Bank of England and has been since 1868. The City of London, UK controls the U.S. economy through the Royal Institute for International Affairs, which subsequently controls the Council on Foreign Relations. The CFR has set U.S. foreign policy since its inception. The City of London, UK controls this, which subsequently controls the Federal Reserve of New York, the World Bank, and the International Monetary Fund. The City of London, UK controls the U.S. Treasury monetary policy, which commands all three of those globalist organizations through the Exchange Stabilization Fund. Queen Elizabeth's imperial control of America. The British Crown and the British East India Company have never left America, and in fact, the Crown agents do their business to this very day. They have a death grip on the U.S. economy, from data management to corporate banking to the rip-off of American resources of gas, uranium, gold, and every other valuable asset in the United States. American wealth feeds directly into Britain and the Bank of England, the City of London, UK, and ultimately to the British monarchy, Queen Elizabeth II herself. The American corporate mechanism for the continued enrichment of the British Crown is the same one used for the corporate sellout of the American Republic. Corporate lobbyists controlling Congress, corporate pay-to-play through the executive branch, Department of State, etc., and the senior executive services to maintain the bureaucratic status quo that sells out to global corporatism at every turn with no-bid contracts, and the cronyism that clearly shows that we are subjects to the British monarchy. The senior executive service hides in plain sight, but operates in a manner that aligns with the imperialistic intents of Circle and the numerous other corporations like British Petroleum, Shell, ICAP, British American Tobacco, Sab Miller, American Standard Life, Rio Tinto, and Extrata, among many others. The history of the Crown Agents. The Crown Agency was an administrative body of the British Empire, distinct from the Civil Service Commission of Britain or the government administration of the national entity in which it operated. These enterprises were overseen from 1833 to 1974 by the Office of Crown Agents in London, thereafter named the Crown Agents for Overseas Governments and Administrations. Crown Agents for Overseas Governments and Administrations, Ltd., became a private limited company providing development services in 1996. Crown agencies nominally reported directly to and were wholly owned by the Crown, but in practice reported to the Crown Agency Office in London. Thus independent of the Colonial Office, this office became, in the late 19th century, the sole official British commercial and financial agent of all British protectorates and Crown colonies. The Colonial Office enforced a policy of sole usage of Crown agencies for all purchases of goods for government use, creating a virtual monopoly over government retail supply within the colonies of the British Empire. The Crown agencies also became financial institutions, supplying capital, routes for investment, and pensions to all public works and governments in British dependent colonies. It is even reasonable to believe that after the American Revolution, American companies did not continue to do business with these Crown companies for resources, goods, and services. Life went on. Crown agencies traced their founding to the time of British Empire in 1833. The British government hived off from the Colonial Office as a financing, stores, transport, and development office. Historians have argued that the Crown agencies, whose organizations operated across the British Empire in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, were the de facto administrators of British colonies. Crown agencies wielded governmental powers to a maze of British territories protectorates, dependencies, mandates, and crown colonies, which made up the British Empire of the late 19th century. After this, their mandate was reduced to dependent colonies, most of British Africa, India, and the West Indies, but they were given near monopoly rights over finance and supply of non-local manufacturers for any public or government use. With the dissolution of the British Empire, many of these agencies reverted to control by their respective governments, became parts of the British government, or become a non-government organizations, NGOs. The British government incorporated the Crown Agency as government-mandated corporation tied to the Minister of Overseas Development, called the Crown Agents for Overseas Governments and Administration. In 1997, the Crown Agency was privatized. As a private limited company, the CAOGA has a number of contracts to provide governmental or paragovernmental services throughout the world. Even though these organizations were privatized on paper, the power generally did not shift. It merely transformed into shareholder holdings and board of directors. The term golden share developed to describe special rights given to the Queen and a stock company that gave her special preferential rights over the voting and profit distribution, and thus ultimate control like she had before. While privatization allowed more shareholders, the Queen generally continued to control votes and profit distribution, and while disproportionate to her single 10-pence voting share, golden share in the mining mega company Rio Tinto plc. For example, in addition, whenever one sees that British royalty populate a company's board of directors, remember that these are people who pledged an oath of allegiance to the Queen first, company second. The legal category of Crown agencies still exists in some nations of the former British Empire. In most places, these have been replaced by government agencies, state-controlled companies, and in parts of the Commonwealth, Crown corporations. Canada and New Zealand maintain the category of government-managed or owned entities called Crown agencies. Crown Agents International. We have 1 hour, folks, but we're going to go over time. Crown Agents International, CAI, is an international development company that works with governments, aid agencies, NGOs, and companies in nearly 100 countries. Through consultancy, supply chain management, and financial services, they help countries grow their economies, strengthen their health systems, and improve financial management. CAI is headquartered in Sutton, Surrey, but has an established network of international offices, project offices, or representatives in 40 countries. Crown Agents International is one of the world's leading experts in public procurement and supply chain management, and they provide financial services to facilitate development, focusing on international payments and cash management, trade, finance, and investment management for donors, NGOs, and financial institutions. Crown Agents USA Incorporated. The following descriptions of the corporation Crown Agents USA Incorporated are taken from their website found at www.crownagents.com. Our story begins in the 1700s when colonial administrations employed agents to recruit people and procure and ship supplies to the colonies. Some agents had been authorized to manage British Treasury grants, and they had become known unofficially as Crown Agents. On April 1st, 1833, the British government appointed the first joint agents general for Crown colonies, George Bailey and Edward Bernard. Although appointed by the British Treasury, the joint agents general were accountable only to the governors of the 13 Crown colonies that they served. They managed grants, raised capital, recruited personnel, and shipped supplies for their clients. Since our incorporation in the United States, we have provided technical assistance services and support to the U.S. government agencies, including the United States Agency for International Development. Millennium Challenge Corporation, Department of State, Department of Defense, and United States Trade and Development Agency. We are an international development company that partners with governments, AIDS agencies, NGOs, and companies in nearly 100 countries. We help countries grow their economies, strengthen their health systems, and improve financial management. We have permanent offices in 22 countries and present the presence in another 18 through our project offices and representatives. We are a limited company owned by a nonprofit making foundation, the Crown Agents Foundation, as our sole shareholder. The Crown Agents Board is responsible for the company's corporate governance. We were founded in 1833 and operated as a British statutory corporation for many years before being privatized in 1997. U.S. Agency for International Development is connected with them. And we have many other countries here all over the world. All over the world. Yep, all over the world. Different corporations, different companies. Shell Oil Company, BP, British Petroleum, all these different companies. Silicon Valley, Canadian Groups Incorporated, British control of our sensitive data, tentacles of Circle strangle America. Circle strangles America. Finally, warning of the American Revolution. Finally, winning the American Revolution. Yep. Crown Agents, USA Incorporated, Washington, D.C. assessed April 17, 2018, federal vendor contracting profile. They're in America, folks. They control a lot of stuff. So that was the end of that program. I wish we had some time to do the other ones here. And I don't mean to put down any individuals. We don't want to do that. And maybe I've said some people's names that they can all be saved. You know, even the Queen of England, God bless her soul, Yeshua can save her. Amen. Everyone can be saved. Everyone can have eternal life. But we must reprove things that are wicked and start to bring forth honesty in the land, because the Yeshua is coming real soon. And so this is U.S.Constitution signing off from YouTube in the name of Yeshua. Hallelujah. Bless everyone out there with understanding, and we pray this just for understanding that we can help do what is right for the world and for Yeshua's kingdom. Amen.